I've always been someone who finds solace in running. Something about the rhythm of my breath syncing with the beat of my feet pounding against the dirt was almost therapeutic. It was my time to disconnect, to think or not think at all. But one night changed all of that. It was late October, right around the time when the crisp air starts to bite a little deeper, and the trees seem to shed their leaves with a strange kind of urgency. My usual route ran through the woods near my house, an old nature trail that wound around a reservoir and disappeared into a thicket of pine and oak. I'd run that trail hundreds of times, both during the day and after sunset. It was familiar, comforting, until it wasn't. That particular evening, I started my run around 7:30 p.m. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting everything in a bluish twilight hue. I wore a headlamp, but it was mostly out of habit. I knew the trail like the back of my hand. I wasn't worried. At first, everything felt normal. The wind rustled the trees and a few late birds chirped overhead. My shoes crunched against fallen leaves, and every now and then a squirrel would dart across the path. But maybe 15 minutes in, I got that feeling. You know, the one where your body realizes something's wrong before your brain does. It wasn't a sound, not really. It was more like the absence of sound. The trail suddenly went quiet. No wind, no animals, just the sound of my breathing and footsteps. It was like the forest had taken a deep breath and held it. I slowed down, suddenly, aware of how far I'd gone into the woods. My headlamp flickered slightly, just a hiccup, but it was enough to make my stomach twist. I stopped, turned in a slow circle, shining the beam into the surrounding trees. Nothing, just branches, trunks, shadows. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe a storm was coming. Maybe the animals had settled in for the night. I turned back toward the trail and kept running, but the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got worse. A few more minutes passed. That's when I heard it. Footsteps behind me, not echoes of my own. These were heavier, uneven, like someone limping or dragging a foot. I stopped and spun around, headlamp cutting through the darkness. Again, nothing. I waited, holding my breath, straining to hear. Silence. I took a few hesitant steps backward, eyes still locked on the darkness behind me. Then I turned and started jogging again, a little faster this time. I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced. Someone was there, but every time I looked, the trail was empty. I was starting to feel foolish. Maybe it had been an animal or my imagination. My mind was probably just playing tricks on me, until I saw the figure. It was ahead of me this time, just off the trail, maybe 20 feet into the woods. At first I thought it was a tree, but then it moved. My light caught on something pale, maybe a face. It was hard to tell. The figure didn't move like someone walking or running. It swayed, almost rocking side to side, like it was trying to decide whether to come closer or stay hidden. I stopped cold. "Hey," I called out. "You okay?" No response. The figure didn't move toward me, but it didn't retreat either. I started backing away slowly, keeping my eyes on it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I turned and broke into a full sprint. No more jogging, just pure panic. Branches slapped my arms and face as I pushed harder, faster, trying to get out of the woods. The trail felt like it was stretching longer, refusing to let me go. Then I heard it again, footsteps, but this time they were faster, closer. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran until I saw the break in the trees, the edge of the woods, where the trail met the road. I burst through and nearly collapsed onto the gravel, but even then, I didn't stop running. I sprinted all the way home, slammed the door behind me and locked every bolt I had. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with every light on, gripping a kitchen knife, jumping at every sound. I kept telling myself it was just some weirdo trying to scare me, or maybe a hallucination from dehydration or exhaustion. But the next morning, I walked back to the trail in daylight. I had to know if it had really happened. About halfway down the path, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. A small piece of fabric torn and tangled in a low-hanging branch. It was dark, maybe grey or black. It looked almost like a sleeve. I took it home with me just to prove it was real. I kept it in a drawer for a few days. I don't know why. Eventually I threw it away. But the worst part came a week later. I got a knock at my door. It was a police officer doing a welfare check. Apparently, someone had reported strange noises in the woods near the trail. Screaming, they said. Multiple calls. They asked if I'd seen or heard anything unusual. I lied. I said no. I never went back to that trail again. Even now, I run only in daylight in crowded parks or on busy streets, but sometimes when I'm alone, I still hear those footsteps, and I wonder, what would have happened if I had stopped to look back? They say your instincts are there for a reason, that deep, primal gut feeling that something is off, even when everything around you appears normal. I used to think that was just anxiety talking. That is, until one night proved me dead wrong. I was living in a small town in Oregon at the time. Nothing fancy, just one of those quiet places where people leave their doors unlocked and everyone nods to each other at the grocery store. I worked remotely, which left my days pretty flexible, and I got into the habit of jogging at night. There was something peaceful about running under the stars, the streets mostly empty, the world quieter than usual. That night was just like any other. I set out around 10 p.m., headphones in, hoodie up, the chill of autumn already settling into the air. My route took me down a stretch of residential streets, then onto a longer, dimly lit road that led toward the outskirts of town, kind of a no man's land before you hit the main highway. Not many people walked there after dark. I liked that. It felt like my own private path. I was about a mile in when I noticed something strange. There was a streetlight, one of those older ones that flickered occasionally, that seemed to have someone standing beneath it. At first glance, it looked like just another person out for a walk, maybe a fellow night owl. But as I got closer, I realized they weren't moving at all. No pacing, no checking their phone, just standing, motionless. I slowed down. The air around me felt thicker somehow. I pulled out one earbud and kept my pace steady, trying not to look like I was bothered. I thought maybe it was just a guy waiting for someone, or someone catching their breath. I told myself 1,000 little excuses. As I passed under the glow of the streetlight, I finally got a good look at him. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like a dark trench coat, even though it wasn't cold enough for that. His face was shadowed by the brim of a hat, like an old fedora, the kind you see in old detective movies. He didn't say anything, didn't move, just watched me. I gave a polite nod, barely meeting his eyes, and kept running. My heart was hammering in my chest. Even though nothing had technically happened, I ran faster, convincing myself it was fine, just some eccentric guy. Maybe a little creepy, but harmless. About 5 minutes later, I looked back. He was still there, still standing under the same flickering light. I turned a corner and picked up the pace, wanting to put as much distance between us as possible. The streets ahead were darker. This part of the town didn't have many working streetlights. I slowed my breathing and tried to refocus on the run. No big deal, I kept repeating. Just a guy. Just a guy. Then I heard footsteps, quick, heavy ones. Not far behind me, I stopped dead in my tracks and spun around. No one. The street was empty. I listened, holding my breath, straining to catch even the faintest sound. Nothing. But I could feel it. That same gut-deep warning that I'd ignored earlier. I knew something was wrong. I started running again, this time full-on sprinting. I rounded another corner, and that's when I saw him again. Somehow, impossibly, he was ahead of me now, standing under another streetlight, same coat, same hat, still, silent, waiting. I didn't stop to think. I cut through someone's front yard, jumped a low fence, and ran through back alleys I barely recognized. My lungs burned and my legs ached, but I didn't care. I just had to get away. Eventually, I burst onto a main road where a gas station was still open. I ran straight inside, panting, eyes darting wildly. The clerk looked up, startled. "You okay, man?" he asked. I nodded, trying to catch my breath. "Yeah," I lied. "Just a long run." I stayed there for about half an hour, pretending to browse snacks, sipping from a water bottle. When I finally stepped back outside, the street was empty. The air felt normal again. I walked home that night, didn't run, didn't even look back. A few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I retraced my route during the day, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. When I reached the original streetlight, the one where he'd first appeared, it was broken, completely out. Hadn't worked in months, according to a neighbor I asked. That made no sense. I saw it flickering that night. I saw him standing beneath. It bathed in the light, and yet I don't jog at night anymore. I don't even walk alone after dark. But sometimes when I close my eyes to sleep, I can still see the faint glow of that streetlight, still flickering, still illuminating the figure who was never supposed to be there. You never expect your routine to betray you, but that's the thing about routines. They make you feel safe. They lull you into thinking nothing could possibly go wrong because nothing ever has. Until one night, it does. I live near a stretch of protected forest in northern Michigan. Beautiful, quiet, and isolated in the best possible way. I've always loved running trails, and I considered myself lucky to have access to such a vast and peaceful landscape right behind my home. There were miles of maintained paths that curved between the trees, and during the summer months I'd often jog as the sun went down, right when the woods turned golden and the air was still warm. But autumn brought shorter days, and though I should have adjusted my schedule, I found myself running later and later until I was eventually jogging in near darkness. It never really bothered me. I had a headlamp. I knew the trails by heart. I wasn't scared of animals, and the forest never felt threatening. It was just trees after all, or so I thought. This happened about 2 years ago, early October. I remember it was unusually cold for that time of year. My breath came out in clouds, and I could see frost beginning to form on fallen leaves as I started my run. The forest was silent, eerily so. No crickets, no birds, just the sound of my own footsteps on the trail. I was about 20 minutes in when I noticed something off. It started small, just a flicker of movement in the trees to my right. I glanced over. Nothing. Kept running. Then I heard it. A branch. Snapping. Heavy. Deliberate. I stopped, pulling off my headlamp to shine it toward the sound. The beam cut through the undergrowth, lighting up the twisted trunks of pine and oak trees. Nothing moved. Nothing looked out of place. I told myself it was probably a deer, or maybe a raccoon. Still, I picked up the pace. The trail curved, and as I turned the bend, I caught something out of the corner of my eye, something standing just off the path, half hidden behind a tree. My heart stuttered. I turned the light toward it, but it was already gone. Now I was nervous. I turned my music off and listened, really listened. There it was again, footsteps behind me. But when I spun around, the trail was empty. It didn't make sense. I'd run these woods 100 times and never once felt watched until now. I started jogging again, this time trying not to make noise. The forest had shifted. It felt tighter, more enclosed, like the trees were leaning in, listening. I could feel eyes on me, though I couldn't see anything. Every sound was amplified, the rustling leaves, the whisper of wind through the branches, the thud of my shoes on the dirt path. Then up ahead, I saw it. A figure. Slender, unnaturally tall. Standing perfectly still in the middle of the trail, I froze. The headlamp flickered, casting shadows that danced across its form. I couldn't make out its face, couldn't even tell if it had one, just a black silhouette like it had been carved out of the night itself. I shouted, "Hey!" It didn't move, didn't react. I took a step forward, and that's when it twitched. Not moved, twitched like a glitch in a video, jerking its limbs in a way that didn't look human. Then it stepped backward, into the woods. Gone. I didn't wait. I turned around and sprinted back the way I came, lungs burning, heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. I didn't stop, not once, until I reached the edge of the trailhead near my house. I stumbled through the back gate, slammed it shut, and collapsed on my porch, gasping for air. My neighbors said it was probably a trick of the light. A shadow, maybe even a bear. But bears don't stand up like that, they don't vanish like that, and they sure as hell don't twitch like something from a broken world. I didn't run for a while after that. I stuck to my treadmill. I couldn't bring myself to go back into the woods, but curiosity is a strange thing, and fear has a short memory. 2 weeks later, just as the leaves turned blood red, I decided to go back. Not to run, just to walk. To prove to myself it was all in my head. The trail was quiet again, peaceful even. I felt silly for being so scared. I wandered the same path, tracing my steps from that night. Nothing happened, until I found the tree. Psych. One where the figure had stood behind. There were markings on the bark now, deep claw-like grooves, running vertically like something had dragged its fingers down it, hands that were too long to be human, and carved beneath the scratches were words. Just 3. I see you. I haven't been back since, and I don't think I ever will.